3 years ago, there was a group out of London that said African discussions need to be had in Dubai and other places and not in this continent. You in this room stood loud, bold, and clear and said it has to be done in Africa. And you kept that pledge, and you encouraged the African Energy Chamber to continue this. It is bigger than a conference. It is a movement. 4 years ago, 200,000 members. Today, with your support, 4 million strong, baby. 4 million members. 4 million coming together to deal with a bigger problem, an African problem. Climate change and energy poverty that are both sides of the same coin. 600 million Africans don't have access to electricity. 900 million have no access to clean cooking technologies, most of them women. We cannot meet our sustainable development goals without addressing these key critical issues. Energy access and energy poverty, we need to deal with that. And we will not stop as the African Energy Chamber to continue driving this issue even when it's unpleasant to some. Across Africa, we are dealing with a time where they're telling us to stop producing oil, natural gas, coal, to move into cleaner energies. Africa is ready, but it's also time for Africa to have a reckoning. And that reckoning stands with what we do. It stands with what we see across the continent. New discoveries in countries that nobody ever thought could have discoveries. Namibia. New discoveries in South Africa. New discoveries are in Nigeria and across the continent. That tells you Africa's time is now, and as CNBC of international investors, we have a chance in this very moment, in this place, at this time, to select Africa, pick Africa, choose Africa, and drive up energy for its children, its people, and also be part of that global energy discourse that feeds energy security across the world. Your time is now.
Please join me in welcoming His Excellency Dr. Omar Farouk Ibrahim, Secretary General at APO.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, when I stood here to speak last year, I spoke on the imperative of a new paradigm shift in the search for solutions to the imminent challenges that the global energy transition poses to underdeveloped countries, particularly in Africa. I had observed that even though the world had come to accept a global paradigm shift in energy sourcing, especially since the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015, and that paradigm shift has thrown up new challenges, particularly to non-industrialized, underdeveloped countries in Africa, the search for solutions to the identified challenges has not been intellectually rigorous. I noted the contradictions in accepting the reality of energy transition and the challenges that come with it on the one hand, and on the other hand, the search for solutions to those challenges using the same old tools used in the pre-paradigm shift era. Since then, we have had COP27 in APO member country Egypt, where one of its achievements is the progress made in getting those countries that over the last 150 years, by their selfish economic activities, got the planet Earth, which is a common patrimony of all the peoples, animals, and plants living on it, to the imminent climate catastrophe that we are told the planet faces. If all of us, those who did the emissions, as well as the bystanders, do not collectively act fast to end or drastically reduce emissions, to agree to establish a climate fund for loss and damage. As we prepare to go to Dubai for COP28, it's important we go with our own agenda, not to continue with the herd mentality that has largely characterized our negotiation process. And I should like to propose as follows. On the climate funds, by whatever name you call it, adaptation, mitigation, loss, or damage, instead of dangling those funds before our poor countries, we suggest that the developed countries, who incidentally are also the ones with the technology, should invest those funds in further developing and deploying CDR technologies. When they have done this over the next 15 to 25 years and have succeeded in removing from the atmosphere just 500 megatons, or just 25% of the 2,500 megatons of emissions that was added to the atmosphere in the last 150 years, primarily by the industrialized countries, that will give Africa the opportunity to also industrialize using what is today the most reliable, affordable, and accessible form of energy, the same energy form that developed countries use to get to where they are today. Africa shall not put back 500 megatons before it gets industrialized. Even 50% of that shall suffice, and the world will be better for it.
Thank you very much, sir. We'd now like to turn our eyes to the screen as His Excellency Haitham El-Ghais, Secretary General of OPEC, addresses us.
As this is Africa Energy Week, I would like to highlight 5 points that I hope will provide you with food for thought in your discussions. First, financing institutions should ensure that adequate financial investment policies and regulations are available for the entire energy mix. Unfortunately, stringent borrowing requirements, often under the guise of ESG criteria, are limiting capital for hydrocarbon projects. This is slowing Africa's ability to develop using its own natural resources. In addition, the global oil sector will require cumulative investment of around $12 trillion through to 2045 to continue meeting demand and delivering energy security. Ignoring the reality that recent annual investment levels have been well below this figure poses a grave risk to energy security and needs to be remedied. Second, the world must ensure just and inclusive energy transitions that reflect the needs and capabilities and stages of development of all sovereign nations. In a world in which Heathrow Airport consumes more energy than Sierra Leone, or in which 2/3 of all primary schools in sub-Saharan Africa have no access to electricity, the same environmental yardstick should not be used to compare regions at vastly different stages of development. Instead, our goal should be an inclusive, equitable approach in which no country is overburdened beyond its capabilities. Third, policymakers must plan for our energy future based on facts and reality. Population growth, energy demand, and urbanization will rise greatly in Africa and other regions. Globally, OPEC sees primary energy demand expanding by over 20% between now and 2045, and oil demand increasing to around 110 million barrels a day in 2045. Africa is expected to see oil demand increase by close to 80% over the same period. It's clear that all energy sources, all relevant technologies, and unprecedented investment and collaboration and support are required. Fourth, moving forward, we need to strike a balance between delivering the affordable energy products and services that people require to live a comfortable life and reducing emissions. In this respect, technological innovation is a key focus for OPEC. To ensure a sustainable future, many of our member countries are already investing heavily in hydrogen projects, carbon capture utilization and storage facilities, and the circular carbon economy. More countries across Africa will be able to do the same if properly allowed to utilize their natural resources to generate revenues. Global climate challenges should be addressed fairly, especially as Africa contributes around 3% to global annual greenhouse gas emissions, the smallest share of any continent. Fifth, utilizing Africa's natural resources like oil and gas will help deliver energy affordability and alleviate energy poverty. This is vital on a continent where hundreds of millions of people still lack access to electricity, and around 1 billion still rely on inefficient and polluting cooking systems. Everyone must understand that energy transitions means something very different for those with very basic energy needs. Delivering universal energy access must be a priority. Ultimately, as the old African saying goes, tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today.
Well, it is refreshing, ladies and gentlemen, to see the ongoing efforts and commitments of national oil companies to the continent. But on that note, we also continue with our opening remarks, and this time look to extend the collaborative approach by understanding how our various peers continue to operate across the globe. So I'd like to introduce our next two speakers, but starting off with our first speaker, who'll give us some perspective from the U.S. Department of Energy, Mr. Joshua Volz, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Europe, Eurasia, Africa and Middle East in the Office of the International Affairs of the U.S. Department of Energy.
The events of the last few years have impacted each of our nations differently, but the challenges remain the same. And it's clear that we have different approaches to navigating them, as well as different priorities, advantages, and challenges. But we also know that the climate crisis will define the next century for every country on every continent. We recognize that African countries bear little responsibility for that climate change, and yet its effects have already disproportionately hurt many on the continent. And climate change is already causing damage that will slow and even threaten to degrade the progress and the gains that you have worked so hard to achieve. But in clean energy, we have the solutions that can curb climate change while also addressing the dilemmas that we have heard spoken about thus far. The access to energy, energy affordability, reliability, and the security of those energy resources. Clean energy is one of the greatest economic opportunities of our time. By the end of this decade, the global market for clean energy technologies is projected to release, if not surpass, $23 trillion. It's not just an obligation, but a tremendous opportunity. This is an opportunity that we can all share in and represents investment in your countries and in your communities and in your people. We believe this will create tens of thousands of jobs in the United States and millions in Africa. Africa is the future for our energy transition. Africa will play a central role in our collective energy, clean and energy future to a more secure energy future. The region has tremendous energy production potential and to some the most significant critical minerals reserves in the world. If developed in the right way and with trusted partners, Africa can lead the way by building sustainable supply chains that move beyond the extraction to higher value and processing and create greater value add and greater value propositions for the people of Africa, to create higher paying manufacturing jobs that will fuel and accelerate the clean energy transition. And with the growing cohort of young entrepreneurial Africans, the African spirit can play a key role in training the clean energy workforce of the future. At the Department of Energy, we are working across the spectrum of energy projects to make clean energy technology projects more bankable. As Secretary Granholm likes to say, the Department of Energy is the Department of Everything and the Department of Solutions. We are keen to explore ways to partner on clean energy with carbon removal in innovative ways like using extra waste heat from geothermal generation in Kenya to cheaply remove carbon from the air. We have started programming with the Ghana Clean Energy Training Center to launch the Pan-African Nuclear Energy Training Program over the summer, open to all with a no cost to African partners to consider clean energy and nuclear solutions as a way to enable economic development, energy security, and decarbonization. Our Hydrogen Earthshot, launched by the Secretary, will catalyze the number of development opportunities in cheaper and more efficient technologies and scale that technology in markets by developing hydrogen hubs and working with others closely to deploy those partner technologies in new environments.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming to stage Son Excellence Bruno Jean-Richard Itoua, Ministre des Hydrocarbons de la République du Congo.
Today, this conversation remains paramount. The path we choose now will shape the energy and economic future of our continent. We are strongly committed through our affiliation with APO and OPEC to relegating energy poverty to the annal of history by 2030. Energy is the driving force of our development and growth. However, as with any mechanism, there are friction points, and within our current energy mix, that point pertain to hydrocarbons. Yet, for a country like ours, these resources constitute a pivotal portion of our revenues. Stopping the production would jeopardize our stability and that of many other nations. Given the ever-increasing energy demand, a one-sided solution is not the good answer. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it falls upon us collectively to join forces in redefining our energy landscape. We must prioritize more efficient value chains while further harnessing our gas reserves, never losing sight of our ecosystem's pivotal role. Forests, particularly those within the Amazon, Congo, and Borneo Mekong basins, play a crucial role in atmospheric CO2 capture. In this context, I'm honored to announce the forthcoming Tree Basin Summit in Brazzaville in October from 26 to 28 of this year, which will be held under the distinguished patronage of His Excellency, my President, the President of the Republic of Congo, Mr. Denis Sassou Nguesso. The Republic of Congo is acutely aware of the challenges at hand. This is why we have embarked on an economic diversification, placing a greater emphasis on gas and launching large-scale electrification projects. Electrification is our answer to energy poverty. Let us not forget that one of the pivotal challenges of our economic growth is to combat energy poverty. We will never say that enough. By some estimates, out of the 2.6 billion people in our planet, as is all the time said, and I hope one day we will stop saying that, 900 million people in Africa have no access to domestic gas, leading them to resort to coal, thereby contributing to deforestation in my country. Moreover, nearly 600 million Africans still live without access to electricity. Our strategies aim to stimulate our economy while ensuring carbon neutrality by 2030. Our commitment to eliminate flaring in my country, in place since 2007, stands as a testament to our resolve in forging a clean LNG sector. And I'm pleased, as it was said in the presentation of my national oil company, to announce that in 2 months, in December of this year, Congo will export for the first time LNG.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for sharing in the commitments that the country is making. And on that note, I'd like to welcome the next speaker, Richard Bach, Director for South Atlantic Exploration at ExxonMobil.
And whilst we expect growth of alternative energy forms, particularly wind and solar, fossil fuels remain the most effective way to produce the massive amounts of energy needed to create and support the manufacturing, commercial transportation, and industrial sectors that drive modern economies. And gas is a critical part of the overall solution to move to a lower carbon future. It is affordable, accessible, and reliable, and offers a more certain short to medium-term pathway for industrialization. So when we combine this all together, we project that oil and natural gas will continue to account for over half of the energy mix in 2050. And when we combine this with progress in affordable decarbonisation options, such as carbon capture and storage, hydrogen and biofuels, we believe it will be possible to solve what we call the "and" equation, having both the development of economies and the lowering of greenhouse gas emissions. And Africa has a big role to play here. You have an advantaged position to solve the energy needs going forward. You have, and will have, the people that are not only driving demand, but also driving innovation for economic growth. And you have the collaborative spirit, as we see today, to reach across borders and create solutions to energy demands. We, as ExxonMobil, are positioned to partner with you on this energy journey.
Again, a clear demonstration of the commitments of the private sector, both locally and internationally, to advance the energy sector here on the continent. Now, in this light, I'd like to welcome to stage our next speaker, His Excellency Antonio Oburu Ondo, President of the OPEC Conference and Minister of Mines and Hydrocarbons of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea.
I'm happy to report that OPEC continues to be a force for stability. We've been seeing how OPEC has been fighting this last month to make sure that there is market stability. And this is a market stability that has been benefiting all the oil and gas producing countries. We all know that a volatile oil market is bad for global consumers, and this is very important, for global consumers and also for African producers alike. We at OPEC take our responsibility very seriously. OPEC decisions are actually based on data and not political considerations. OPEC will continue to monitor markets and work closely with African countries, including our African member nations and including Apple, along with non-OPEC countries, to strengthen the spirit of our Declaration of Cooperation and give African states every opportunity to grow and benefit from their oil and gas industries. I'm also happy to share promising news about Equatorial Guinea, where our efforts to drive exploration and production activities are seeing success. Our ministry has awarded new production sharing contracts for 6 offshore oil and gas blocks this year. However, our vision for a thriving energy industry and the socio-economic benefits that come with it is not constrained within our national borders. Equatorial Guinea welcomes regional collaboration. We recently established a bilateral agreement with Cameroon on cross-border oil and gas development. We also signed similar agreement with Nigeria in 2022. And we are always looking for additional opportunities for regional collaboration. We also are aiming to form partnerships with more private sector companies, which will drive ongoing exploration in our country and in turn open the economic growth and diversification. We are already partners with some world-class companies, including Africa Oil Corporation and Panoro, as I mentioned before, alongside with Chevron, with ExxonMobil, Marathon, EGLNG, Trident Energy, and others. E&P activities is gaining momentum here because of Equatorial Guinea's enabling environment for investments and our strong records for successful offshore findings. Combined, these factors make partnership with Equatorial Guinea a tremendous opportunity, a realistic one, and this is actually happening.
We're going to hear from 2 speakers who specifically represent oil businesses which are participating actively in being key leaders and enablers of unlocking these opportunities across the continent from an oil and gas point of view. I'd like to warmly welcome Rick Kennedy, Chairman and Managing Director at Chevron Nigeria.
According to the United Nations 2022 World Population Prospect Report, the world's population is projected to reach 8.5 billion by 2030, with more than half that growth expected to occur in Africa, and the need to improve the standard of living for everyone. We will need all forms of energy. At Chevron, we are confident that oil and gas will remain a viable component of the energy mix. At the same time, we also believe the future of energy is lower carbon, and we intend to lead in that future. We are taking action to lower the carbon intensity of our traditional operations with a focus on reducing methane emissions and flaring, while improving operational reliability, efficiency, and energy management. In addition, we are targeting a total of $10 billion in low-carbon investments by 2028. This includes growing lower-carbon businesses in renewable fuels, hydrogen, carbon capture, carbon offsets, and other emerging lower-carbon opportunities. In Africa, and everywhere we operate, we follow our Chevron Way values, including the development of local talent and through championing diversity, inclusion, and equality. More than 90% of our workforce in most countries where we operate are national employees, and our employees on the continent are proud to be helping to develop the energy that improves lives and powers the world forward. Additionally, African talent shows up well across our international operations. In London, for example, we currently have senior managers from Mali, Angola, and Nigeria working in our international headquarters. Their perspectives are invaluable, and their work is instrumental in moving the company forward. Providing access to energy for all people is the right and moral thing to do. We believe that the future of energy is lower carbon, and that lower carbon energy future for Africa must be inclusive to help meet the energy needs and enable the economic development of this vibrant continent.
Thank you kindly for your ongoing words of support and, of course, camaraderie and partnership across the key nodes and economic partners that we have primarily in Nigeria. To help us elaborate a lot further on the positioning, investment, and partnership that Total Energies looks to commit to the continent, please warmly welcome the Senior Vice President for Africa, Exploration and Production Activity at Total Energies, Mike Sangster.
We've set an ambitious transformation path to become a multi-energy company, and we're committed to achieving net zero emissions along with society by 2050. And we've also set some very significant interim targets, such as reducing our Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 40% by 2030. Now, Africa represents about 60% of our emissions, so our success or failure will very much depend on what we do here. Now, how are we going to achieve these goals? You know, we need more energy. Africa needs more energy, as we've heard, many times this morning. According to the IEA, the demand for oil is going to be about 103 million barrels per day this year, and continuing to rise to 106 million barrels per day by 2028. So it's up to the industry to deliver this. We cannot compromise on access to energy, and so for Total Energies, that means producing oil and gas differently, while investing in the new technologies of the energy transition. I say we fully support the transition, and the world will move away from oil and gas, but we must develop their replacements first to avoid any chaos and disruption. So it's essential that we have a just transition for all of our host countries, especially here in Africa, and for all the people that we employ directly and indirectly. So again, how can we go about achieving this? So as you know in this room, and as was mentioned earlier, oil and gas reserves deplete naturally, 4 or 5% per year. So even, if we're moving towards a more electric world, we still see the need to invest in oil and gas for many years to come to meet this demand. So I'm here today to tell you that Total Energies will continue to invest in Africa. We're proud to be a partner in energy projects and operations in many different African nations. And so we're working across Africa developing and operating a wide range of exciting projects and assets, and some of them have been mentioned this morning already. We've had some very promising discoveries recently in Namibia and also in Nigeria. We have new projects in Angola and Mozambique. We've just taken FID in Uganda and Tanzania. And we continue to invest and produce in Angola, Nigeria, Congo and Gabon. I think we are the biggest oil and gas producer in Africa, and it's a position that we do intend to keep. Africa represents about 1/5 of our production, and something like, between 1/4 and 1/3 of our investments. And also, it's about 1/3 of our exploration budget, and we'll continue to invest in exploration in Africa, including here in South Africa. But as I said, we do need to develop new energies on the continent as well, and we have something like 38 solar projects in African countries that we're actively working on at the moment.
I would now like to welcome to stage Joseph McNingle, Secretary General of the International Energy Forum, to take the stage.
My 4 takeaways are as follows. 1, energy transition experts have imposed emissions goals in Africa to fit with global priorities. 2, they have not offered Africa a realistic set of alternative scenarios. 3, they have prioritized meeting climate goals over development outcomes. And finally, they lack African perspectives. At the IEF, we've been conducting a series of global dialogues on the energy transition with a focus on the needs of the Global South, where most of the future energy demand is expected to come from. In fact, our very first energy dialogue meeting for the report was held right here in Africa Energy Week last October, which helped us shape our views for the subsequent months. Our report published in August found that expectations of a single global pathway to net zero are misguided and outdated. Instead, our report cites the need for multiple pathways that are inclusive of different situations and in different parts of the world, reflecting varied starting points and a diversity of policy approaches, and is equitable. We'll be talking more about our IEF Global Energy Solutions Initiative in a strategic session on Wednesday at 11 a.m. right here in this hall, so I hope you'll join us for this important dialogue to support our initiative. To drive growth, Africa needs access to global capital, to develop more of its energy resources, and to help them meet internal demand, especially for natural gas. The case of Africa demonstrates why we need dialogue to encourage investments in new global energy supply and keep energy affordable. We must avoid the zero-sum game over restrictive policies that only escalates prices, broadens energy poverty, and will ultimately offer no progress at all towards net zero. I hope you will count on the International Energy Forum, the IEF, as a strong ally for Africa as we enhance understanding of global energy priorities and place Africa's energy priorities at the heart of the international energy discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. In that line, I would like to welcome our next speaker, His Excellency Mohamed Hamal, Secretary General of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum.
In this intricate tapestry of energy pathways, one prominent thread stands out: natural gas. Available, clean, flexible, and versatile natural gas emerge as a catalyst for an equitable energy transition. Natural gas presents a sustainable alternative to traditional fuels such as wood and dung, effectively mitigating the adverse impacts of indoor pollution and helping to combat deforestation. Moreover, natural gas not only improves air quality in densely populated urban areas, but also bolsters the resilience and the reliability of power grids that depend on intermittent and variable energy sources like solar and wind. Natural gas is the partner of renewables. Furthermore, natural gas plays an instrumental role in global food security, as it is a key component in fertilizers production. Ladies and gentlemen, for Africa, blessed with a young demographic and abundant natural resources, yet plagued by energy poverty, socio-economic development is an overriding priority. Africa's natural gas reserves are huge, exceeding 17 billion cubic meters. Natural gas resources are even higher, estimated to be around 45 billion cubic meters, and Africa remains an underexplored continent. However, converting gas reserves into a reliable supply requires substantial investments. And the notion that natural gas investment is incongruent with climate change mitigation is misguided. African nations, bearing no historical responsibility for climate change and contributing only a mere 3% to global greenhouse gas emissions, should not be penalized for using the natural resources to lift their people out of poverty. And we call upon international financial institutions, and notably the African Development Bank, to extend their support to natural gas development projects in Africa.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We'll now take a moment to welcome to stage Honourable Gwede Mantashe, Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy of South Africa, to take centre stage.
We must remember that 1 in every 2 citizens in the continent have no access to electricity. 600 million people of the African continent do not have access to electricity, which is the actual challenge facing every leader in the continent. And it is also important to remember that if you go north of the continent, their access to electricity is close to universal access. Sub-Saharan Africa, at best, it is around 45%. That is what we must be debating and deal with. And therefore, cooperation among African nations is required to ensure that we increase access to affordable, reliable, sustainable energy in line with United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 7. Let us emerge from this conference with renewed commitment to work together for just energy transition. And that just energy transition cannot be theoretical, it must be just, it must talk to people, and it must talk to communities. If it doesn't talk to communities, doesn't talk to people, people are statistics, it is not just. We should also respect national conditions of individual countries in the continent. Let us not neglect developmental imperatives by destroying what we have in the hope of something new will be greater. If we want to exercise, we moved from high carbon emission to low carbon emission, it is important to ensure that exercising energy sovereignty for African nations implies that we must ensure that there is resilience, there is reliability and efficiency of the new energy technologies before we even starting unbundling the old ones. I'm saying that from an economy that is generating energy mainly from coal. And one of the things that is putting us under pressure is that we must move away from coal. And our suggestion is that before we do that, let's test the new technologies. They must be reliable, resilient, and efficient. Then we can begin to unbundle coal. The same applies to oil and gas. We're told that we must not test them. They are fossil fuels. But the reality of the matter is that 82% of world energy is from fossil fuels and coal. And therefore, to just neglect them is going to lead to a collapse. Africa must intensify the effort aimed at developing its oil and gas sector in order to benefit from expected increase in natural gas market and global supply. The recent sizable discoveries of oil in Namibia, Cote d'Ivoire, and Uganda, and gas in South Africa, and huge discoveries of gas in Mozambique are proving to be a game changers and have intensified the need to step up exploration campaigns in the African continent. This opportunity for Africa to benefit from its endowment of these natural resources is at its critical minerals. More important to us that we are not talking about, we are endowed with uranium deposits in the continent. And the fact that Africa never ventured into nuclear energy is actually a myth. I don't know how did it happen. At this point in time, South Africa has a nuclear power station, want to extend that. At least Egypt now is having 4 reactors. There are quite a few African countries talking about nuclear. And I think we should not write it off because uranium moved from Africa to to everywhere else in the world and generate energy there. And here, we don't use it.
Well, that shifts us now to the opening remarks that we're going to hear from our presidential addresses, hearing from key leaders across various parts of the continent who are themselves enabling and creating an environment that is fruitful and, of course, conducive for economic growth and the prosperity of our population. We'll start off by getting some representation from the east of the continent, this time with the Minister of Mineral Resources and Mineral Development in Uganda, the Honorable Minister Ruth Nankabirwa, who will give us some insight into the ongoing investment and opportunities that take place within the economy of Uganda.
I am standing here to represent His Excellency, the President of Uganda, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who would have loved to be here. But it has given me an opportunity to address you, standing in the shoes of my President. It is my pleasure to once again deliver a keynote address at the African Energy Week, having done so last year, a few months after the announcement of the final investment decision for Uganda's oil and gas project. The theme for this year, which is the African Energy Renaissance, prioritizing energy, poverty, people, planet, industrialization, and free markets. It speaks to the fundamentals that Africa should address to improve the lives of our people and transform society. As Uganda continues to participate at this conference, because of the opportunity it provides in enhancing dialogue on the important subjects of energy and development, I would like to pledge continued participation on behalf of my country. You will agree with me that energy is central to the socio-economic transformation of any society, and therefore Africa being the least developed continent on the globe, it needs to take deliberate steps to ensure energy access and security. We have continuously observed that you cannot have a constructive discussion on development without underlying the importance of energy, because when people are poor, they are a threat to the environment. And on the other hand, when people are better socio-economically, they are able to afford cleaner sources of energy like LPG and electricity, thereby preserving the environment. This is evident from the correlation between per capita electricity consumption and Human Development Index. So to safeguard our environment, there is need to assist our people to get out of poverty, and one of the surest ways of achieving this is by pursuing industrialization, which requires adequate energy. Uganda is progressing with the development of oil and gas resources with a target of first oil by 2025. The aim for us is to use oil and gas to provide revenues which will help to invest in infrastructure and industrialization to get the people out of poverty. In addition, we are scaling up the adoption of clean cooking in the country, including the use of LPG, which is in line with our strategic goal to promote clean energy. In this regard, I have recently issued an executive order stopping the cutting down of trees and burning of charcoal in the northern part of our country to save the forests. We are cognizant of the ongoing debate on climate change and greenhouse emissions. However, as a country, Uganda is lucky that its energy mix is dominated by renewables like hydropower, 86%, solar, geothermal, and biomass. Our strategy, therefore, is to continue developing more of these renewable energy resources while harnessing our oil and gas, which will provide the much-needed revenues for development, and also LPG that will help in saving forests and improving the livelihood of our people. You will note that only 10% of the Albertine Graben of Uganda is licensed for petroleum development, and other potential basins are also under consideration. Investors are welcome to invest in Uganda's oil and gas sector. There have been concerns that oil and gas may become obsolete in the near future. However, recent projections show a continued increase in the demand for petroleum in the near and medium term. Besides, we also know that apart from the transportation sector, there are several other uses of petroleum resources, including fuel oils for heating and electricity generation, asphalt and road oil, and feedstocks for making chemicals, plastics, fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, explosives, and synthetic materials, among others. Due to the multi-purpose use of the petroleum products now and in the future, the global average demand for petroleum is projected to increase from 97.1 million barrels per day in 2022 to 105.7 million barrels a day by the year 2030. The key issue to address is penetration of cleaner technologies in Africa that are environmentally friendly. To consolidate our achievements and further define our strategy, Uganda has recently passed the Energy Policy 2023, whose vision is to achieve universal access to sustainable, affordable, and quality energy services for all Ugandans by 2040. This is aligned with the National Development Plan 3 through the Sustainable Energy Program, which reaffirms that the availability of sustainable energy services is critical for economic growth, for poverty reduction, and as well as the social and cultural transformation of the society. The Energy Policy for Uganda of 2023, therefore, aims at ensuring a sustainable, adequate, affordable, competitive, secure, and reliable supply of energy at the least cost geared to meet national needs while protecting and conserving the environment. The government of Uganda plans to implement a free electricity connection policy as one of the strategies to increase access to clean energy in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. The widespread dependency on biomass energy resources for cooking and heating using insufficient methods, such as traditional cook stoves, has resulted in the rapid forest depletion for firewood and charcoal, among others. For instance, the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, reported in 2020 that Uganda suffers a degradation loss of United States dollars 2.3 billion, out of which 25% of wood fuel, and that 2.6% of Uganda's forests are cut down annually for firewood, charcoal, agriculture, and to make way for population growth. If this trend persists, Uganda will lose all its forest cover in at least 25 years. We have to save the environment.
Well, that was us casting our eye to the east. Let's perhaps find out what's happening in the west by primarily paying special attention to Senegal as a key partner and, of course, new opportunities that are being positioned from that economy to ensure that many more partners can come on board. Now, our next speaker couldn't join us in person, but due to the potential of technology and the power that it has, we are able to connect and, of course, have this recorded video message that is delivered by the President of the Republic of Senegal, His Excellency Macky Sall.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, First of all, thank you very much, Brother Enu Ayuk, for your kind invitation to this timely African Energy Week. Let me also extend to you my warm congratulations for the wonderful work you are doing as Executive Chairman of the African Chamber of Energy. J'accepte également avec plaisir la distinction que votre Chambre a décidé de me décerner. C'est pour moi une motivation de plus pour contribuer davantage à la défense des intérêts de notre continent dans le domaine stratégique de l'énergie. Après le premier sommet africain sur le climat à Nairobi en septembre dernier, et à quelques semaines de la COP 28, ces assises de Cape Town nous rappellent opportunément deux enjeux majeurs liés à l'exploitation de nos ressources énergétiques. L'industrialisation de nos pays et l'accès universel à l'électricité dont plus de 600 millions d'Africains sont encore privés. C'est pourquoi nous devons poursuivre sans relâche notre plaidoyer pour une transition énergétique juste et équitable afin que l'exécution de nos engagements au titre de l'action climatique n'entrave pas la réalisation de nos objectifs de développement durable. Ainsi, au Sénégal, grâce à une stratégie de mix énergétique que nous déroulons depuis plusieurs années, les énergies renouvelables représentent aujourd'hui 31% de nos capacités électriques installées. Avec la signature en juin dernier de notre partenariat pour une transition énergétique juste, JETP, nous voulons porter ce taux à 40% d'ici 2030. Des pays partenaires nous y accompagnent pour mobiliser 2,5 milliards d'euros sur une période initiale de 3 à 5 ans, afin de financer nos projets au titre de ce partenariat. Parallèlement, nous restons engagés dans l'exploitation de nos ressources gazières et pétrolières. À cet effet, nous avons mis à jour notre législation sur la base de 4 impératifs. 1. La gouvernance de l'industrie extractive selon les normes de l'ITIE, dont le Sénégal est membre depuis 2013. 2. La juste répartition des revenus entre les générations actuelles et futures. 3. La participation de l'État comme actionnaire dans l'industrie gazière et pétrolière. 4. La prise en compte des intérêts du secteur privé national avec la loi sur le contenu local. Sur ce dernier aspect, nous savons que l'industrie du gaz et du pétrole exige des investissements importants, d'où la nécessité pour nos secteurs privés d'associer leurs moyens pour tirer pleinement avantage des opportunités qu'offre le dispositif du contenu local. Dans le même esprit, je suis heureux de rappeler que dans le cadre du système d'échange d'énergie électrique de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, 11 pays membres de la CEDEAO, notamment le Bénin, le Burkina Faso, la Côte d'Ivoire, la Gambie, le Ghana, la Guinée, le Libéria, le Mali, le Sénégal, la Sierra Leone et le Togo, plus la Mauritanie, sont interconnectés depuis le 8 juillet dernier. C'est une grande avancée qui permet d'assurer entre nos pays un système régulier et fiable d'offres et d'achat d'énergie. Voilà un exemple, parmi d'autres sur le continent, qui montre qu'en étant solidaires et entreprenants, nous pouvons trouver des solutions locales à nos problèmes de développement, y compris dans le secteur névralgique de l'électricité. Avec toute l'expertise réunie ici, je suis confiant que la Semaine africaine de l'énergie nous aidera à aller de l'avant dans cette dynamique positive. Je souhaite plein succès à vos travaux.
Now, we've touched on the East, we've touched on the West, but what's happening in the South? And there's great potential that's been highlighted in an economy that has remained resilient through political stability, of course showed great levels of insight and growth through economic growth prospects that have unfolded, and has a great population that is also able to serve in terms of development and contribution to social development. But as we all know, we've been earmarking opportunities in Namibia, where green hydrogen and oil and gas discoveries have continued to show great potential for many international investors, some of whom are present here in the room. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we take a look at a nation which harbors great potential and opportunities that can be unlocked by the year 2013, please welcome His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Namibia, Hage Geingob.
Access to reliable and quality energy supply is the lifeblood in the economic development of any country. Energy drives industrialization. Energy boosts productivity and economic growth. Energy spurs human development. And it is crucial for us to reach the goals of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I am therefore pleased to have been invited to speak at this auspicious occasion. You have taken an optimistic outlook by challenging us to look at the conversation of this week through the prism of an energy renaissance in Africa. Yes, we are experiencing a renaissance in renewable and non-renewable energy sources on our continent, which will permit us to arrest the challenges of poverty, the protection of our planet, and the industrialization of Africa. However, there are certain things we must get right in order to ensure that we meet the targets that we have set for ourselves as countries and as the continent. For the African energy renaissance to be meaningful, Africa should be permitted to explore and exploit its natural endowments for the prosperity of the continent, not always taking raw materials to Europe. It must be for the benefit of African people. If that is the case, ladies and gentlemen, Namibia is a country that is governed through transparent processes, systems and institutions that facilitate investment and development. For that reason, Namibia is currently a hotbed for hydrocarbon prospecting, with a share of 13% of all offshore rigs operating in Africa. Since 1974, Namibia has witnessed more than 36 wells being drilled, and today Namibia is clearly at the cusp of bringing a globally significant hydrocarbon industry. It is an opportunity that is impossible to pass up. In 2022, Shell and Total announced major oil discoveries off our shores that, if diligently developed, could result in light crude oil reserves estimated at 3 billion barrels. As part of the drive to decarbonize its European refineries, in October 2023, Total Energies issued a call for tenders for the supply of 500,000 tons per year of green hydrogen. In 2022, Shell announced its final investment decision to build Europe's largest renewable hydrogen plant, which is expected to produce up to 60,000 kilograms of renewable hydrogen per day, and will operationalize it in 2025. Multinational oil and energy companies operating in Africa need to demonstrate the same leadership in driving the transition to cleaner energy. Therefore, as oil majors announce major discoveries on our continent, we look forward to announcements in corresponding commitments to build clean and sustainable industrial complexes on the African continent. Doing so is essential to not only respect Mother Nature's thresholds for bearing our unsustainable consumptive vices, but also to ensure that our natural resources are developed in a manner that maximizes benefits for the African continent. How long can we say that? From this morning on, Africans are saying development must benefit Africa, not outside. So we welcome you, but benefits that accrue from these resources must benefit Africa. Affordable energy for all Africans is an immediate and absolute priority. African countries have been working to ensure that our countries have access to energy to industrialize, to grow our economies, and become dealers of hope for the largest demographic on the continent, our youth. The Statistical Review of World Energy report that in 2022, 85.6% of all electricity was generated using non-renewable resources, with coal and natural gas contributing more than half of the world's electricity fuel resources. However, even as non-renewables clearly remain the dominant drivers of energy access today, renewables such as wind, solar, and geothermal exhibited an extraordinary annual growth rate of 14.7%, in sharp contrast to the non-renewables, which only managed an anemic 0.4%. To advance our economies and meet the plight of our people, a healthy and robust energy mix is required.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now, all throughout the opening ceremony, we've had the pleasure to witness the purpose behind everything that we're doing over the next couple of days. Ending energy poverty by 2030. Shared commitments, a drive, and a commitment to achieving that. Now, as we wrap up the opening ceremony, it is my absolute honor and privilege to welcome to stage Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, His Excellency, former President of the Republic of Nigeria.
Every word that I have heard here this morning has been music to my ear. I appeal to the organizer of this Africa Energy Week to allow us to have a side event from 1 o'clock to 2. And what was worrying me was what you have all been talking about here. We have 600 million Africans that do not have light, electric light, in their homes at night. And yet, we are being told that because of climate change, the resources that we have, we cannot use it to be able to give ourselves light, to be able to industrialize ourselves, because it will amount to increasing the carbon emission. And it is the same resource that the industrialized world used to develop themselves. So what was worrying me is, where is the justice? When you use what was available to you, which is now available to us under our own ground, and you say there will be no investment for us to be able to explore and exploit and produce for our development, so you want to keep us in perpetual position of underdevelopment. We reject that. And that's what I've come here for. And I found that every speech seemed to be saying the same thing. My brothers and sisters, we have lived on received ideas that has not done us any good. We have lived on received regulations, rules that were not made for us. And we were made to eat them. We said, just as you subsidize your farmers, let us also subsidize ours. Energy security, energy sustainability, energy stability has to be ensured for us through energy justice.